Hello, everyone. Welcome to another virtual activity from the CTE Foundation. My name is Brandon Jewell. We have a special interview today with a famous chef from our area, Dustin Valette of Valette Restaurant in Healdsburg. Dustin, you mind turning your camera on there?
I thought I got like a big boom, and there we go. We're live in the cellar.
Nice, very nice. And I also want to thank Chef May and her Advanced Culinary class for being with us today. We can't see them right now, but we will have them turn their cameras on later during a Q&A and ask some questions if they have them. So Dustin, thank you so much for being here. As I was telling you earlier, it's sort of a regret of mine that I actually haven't eaten at your restaurant, but now after talking to you and after going through and Googling some images for this activity and seeing some of the food you prepare, I'm like, I have to go. And it sounds like you have a nice outdoor area, so I'm looking forward to that now.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. So, Chef, I'm hoping that we can just start it out simply by having you give us a little bit of a bio, like a 5-minute background on how you got into becoming a chef and an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. So I started really young. I started cooking professionally at 13. And I fell in love with cooking as a kid. When I was 4 or 5 years old, I was always equally skinny. The camera does add like 50 pounds, just heads up. But I was always equally skinny as a child. And I always really wanted to like just sit at the table, come together. And this when I was, 8, 9 years old, we would sit there and we would literally have a dinner together with my mom, my dad, my uncles would come over, our cousins. And it was really that social interaction that I loved. And to this day, it's the best part of my life, honestly. And I started really kind of getting into it more and more. When I got to 10 or 12, I would start cooking, actually like dinners at my house with my family. And it wasn't until my 13th birthday that I got a work permit to be able to go work at a local restaurant called Catelli's up here in Geyserville. And that's when I really kind of just took it from a hobby in my house to an actual career profession. I started on, I think, 3 days after my 13th birthday. They wouldn't hire me as chef. I applied for chef. For some reason, they didn't hire me at 13 as chef. Wow. I don't know why. Yeah, it was strange. I didn't quite understand the whole thing worked. But they hired me as a busser. And then I was promoted to a dishwasher, which was a huge day. Like I remember coming home, like, guys, I got promoted to wash dishes. And I think I was paid $4.75 an hour back in the day. But anyways, so got really excited and just really fell in love with the professional kitchen. Fell in love with, more importantly, what you do in professional kitchen. And if you think about it, as you guys are watching, the students, as we've been talking. So much of what we do in life is what kind of joy does it bring you? What's the reason for doing this? You really think about the experiences we have. When we take a vacation, we're going to go to Hawaii. We're going to go to New York. We're going to go to wherever it is, the ocean. And it's about that experience. It's about that feeling. It's how it makes you feel when you go there. And I was very lucky as a kid to be able to sit back and say, in my life, I want to do something that every day when I wake up, I want to go to work. Every day when I wake up, it's something I want to go do. And I wouldn't say it's a vacation, especially 2020 taught us a lot of important lifelong lessons. But it's really something that in the mornings when I wake up, I want to go to the restaurant. When I wake up in the mornings, I'm thinking about food. I'm thinking about the restaurant. I'm thinking about flavor combinations. I'm thinking about wine. I'm thinking about charcuterie we can see in the background. And I was literally at 13 able to kind of find something that I loved, something that I understood what that career path was going to look like for me. And then I basically jumped in. I jumped in at 13. Started off washing dishes, like I said, at Catelli's. Got promoted to being prep, which meant I was able to peel carrots and wash pots and pans, which was a huge day. And then from there, I just basically kind of kept continuing on that path of restaurants. At 15, I did an apprenticeship at Chateau Souverain, which was at the time one of the nicest restaurants. It's now a Coppola restaurant up there in Geyserville. I was able to graduate high school kind of early, graduate high school at 17, and I went to New York to the CIA. I was able to, I did okay in school. So I sat back and I had all these unique opportunities.
Dustin, do you mind clarifying what the CIA is so we don't get it mixed up?
Oh, absolutely. Central Intelligence Agency. I was a spy for Russia. No, I'm just kidding. The Culinary Institute of America. So the Culinary Institute of America is, I would say, probably the best culinary school, or at least one of the best culinary schools for a 4-year associate's degree in New York. And at the time, it was different. You had to have like 3 years experience. And when I applied, they denied my application because I was too young. I was 17. So I actually had to fly to New York and do a cooking demonstration, which they let me in off that. And I was able to take the idea, the passion of restaurants and apply it to a kind of a college setting, if you will. And it really was at the CIA that I really kind of gained the in-depth knowledge of world cuisine, the in-depth knowledge of the industry that I'm into this day. It also gave me a lot more roundness and a lot more intellectual capabilities of the culinary arts as opposed to the physical elements of cooking. From there, I was able to go to LA. I worked in LA for about a year, worked at a couple of cool restaurants out there. And then from there, I 17-year-old kid just kind of wanted to go bounce around. So I went to San Francisco. I went to Napa. I worked at Bouchon French Laundry for a couple of years. Then I decided I never had a vacation, and I was just turned 21. So I went to Hawaii, and I worked in Hawaii for a couple of years, managing Oriental, and then went back to San Francisco. I was the executive sous chef of Aqua for 3 years. From there, I wanted to go learn Europe. I always heard about Europe and had the opportunity to buy a one-way ticket and went to Europe, started in Rome, first place I touched down, and traveled all the way up through Champagne, ended back in Paris, and then hung out there for a little bit and came back. In 2007, started my first restaurant called Vox, V-O-X, in Henderson, Nevada. So about 5 minutes south of Las Vegas. It was a freestanding restaurant out there. 2008 happened, which was a great time to not own a business in Las Vegas. I was able to kind of parlay that into coming back out here to Sonoma County. The time I got married to my beautiful wife, Johanna, and we came out here to kind of settle down here in Healdsburg. I was at Street Kitchen for 6 years as the executive chef with Charlie Palmer. And then in 2015, we got crazy and we started Valette, which has been going for 6 years now. About 3 years ago, we decided that Valette was an amazing restaurant, but it made sense to have a little diversification. So we started a second restaurant called the Matheson, which we started the process about 3 years ago. We started construction about 20 months ago, and we are about 3 months out from finalizing that dream, that vision. A pretty large venture. And that's it.
Where'd you say the new restaurant was?
In 5 minutes. It's right here in Healdsburg, on the Healdsburg Square, called the Matheson.
Okay. Something that you mentioned, there's two things that you mentioned that sticks out to me. One is you started as a busser / dishwasher, right, in the industry. And a lot of folks,
as a dishwasher. I was excited.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of folks kind of think to themselves, well, I don't want to do that, or I don't want to work my way up. I mean, even then you said at 13, you applied as a chef, right? But I think it's important to know in this industry, like other industries, you sort of, that's how it works. You can't just jump the gun. You have to work your way up. Another thing I noticed that you'd said, it was reminiscent of something that Chef John Ash said in an earlier interview we did with him, was you had mentioned, traveling the world and trying different dishes and different cultures. And I realized that, and even Chef May earlier when we were talking about this, mentioned that she had done the same. And so I think it's such an interesting thing to think about, like how cultured you have to be and how traveling can really help refine that culinary touch. Do you want to talk about that, like what you learned while traveling?
Absolutely. I mean, I think about what food is. Food, what we do, what I do as a chef is you're taking a raw ingredient. You're taking a tomato, you're taking an onion, you're taking a turnip. You're taking a very simple thing And what you're doing is you're changing that. You're adding heat, you're pureeing, you're cooking, you are cutting it really fine. Doing all these different techniques to take it from a core vegetable, for example, into something that is more palatable for our palates. Think about a piece of beef, right? You take a piece of cow, right? A dead cow, and it's not really that exciting, right? But you take it, we cut out individual cuts of meat, we season it, we cook it, we let it rest, we eat it, and it changes so much, the food. And you think about, we as creatures, we as a species has been doing this for thousands and thousands of years. And for us to say that, oh, the only way to sear a steak is in a pan with butter, that's not really true. That's what we're doing today. Today, that's one of the better techniques, is to grill it in open fire or to sear it in a pan for like a New York or a filet or a ribeye. But the techniques that we use today have been proven over many, many years. And instead, it's the technique we're using on this moment. And what I'm trying to get to is, there's so many different ways of cooking the steak. There's so many different ways of producing a dish. And when you learn the culture, when you understand that us as Americans, we're a melting pot of different cultures, different cuisines. When you go to Italy, right? When you go to St. Sebastian and you see how they look at food, how they interpret food. When you go to Decazeville, France, right? When you go to these little baby Père Rouge, right? Père Rouge is a small little baby, tiny little village, right, in France. And you go there and you see what their style of food is and how they've been isolated from the rest of France, how it's a different interpretation of cuisine. When you see that and you feel that and you understand what their passions are for food, for the culinary arts, it gives you more depth. It gives you more items. It gives you a different way of looking at food. So when you go to grab that steak, when you grab that turnip, when you grab that tomato, you can use that piece of that interpretation of how to cook food and apply it to what your core philosophies are in food, in cuisine, I should say. And I think, to me, that is probably the best thing as a chef, is it gives you depth. It doesn't give you the surface. It gives you the depth of knowledge, the excitement of saying, we don't have to just sear the steak in a pan. In Père Rouge, they had this big, massive wood fire oven. They did a lot of wood fire oven cooking. It was a castle up on a hill, and the castle had maybe 500 people that lived inside this, I guess, little village, right? Castle with small little houses around it. And they had this massive hearth. I mean, it's half the size of this room. And they did so much of this huge cooking inside this massive wood fire oven. They did galettes à Père Rouge. They did all these like different styles. And when you see it and you understand that it doesn't have to be a pan-seared steak basted in butter, but instead you can take a steak and roast it in a pan in an oven where it has direct heat from the bottom, but also heat from the top of the oven cooking together. And you're cooking the steak at the same time. You understand that the steak cooks in a different way. It's searing from outside and from the inside, and you're cooking it at 600 degrees. And there's so many things, to me, that when you when you see different cultures, when you see the different ways of interpreting something, it just gives you more depth. It lets your mind expand and say, we don't have to do one single recipe. We don't have to follow the recipe. We can get inspired by the recipe and put our own spin on it.
Great. Now I see that we have some students who have some questions. So I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna call you out one by one based on who has some questions. Maeve, I see that you have a question. Do you want to unmute and turn your camera on and ask?
Yeah, sure. I was wondering if you could spend any more time like studying or working with food from any one culture, what would it be?
It's a really good question.
Mm-hmm.
I love across the board. I love different cultures, different cuisines. The thing that gets me excited is when you go to Hawaii. You go to Hawaii and you see how they look at food. They look at food as a source of where it comes from. It comes from the ocean. They grow it right there on amazing fertile land. And you see how they have this culture of everyone comes together when they cook. And that's because they used to go and gather food a little more. They'd go out and have people that would grow food. Another group of the village would go out and harvest the food. Another group of the village go out there and go fishing. And you see how the culture comes together and shares food together. It's really inspiring. I think the one thing I haven't really spent a lot of time on is in the Asia Pacific. I've done a little bit, but in like Asia, it's like Japan, I haven't spent a lot of time with the Japanese culture and the Japanese cuisine. That's something that's exciting to me just because so much of what we have, so much of what we know is like pasta. Everyone thinks of pasta as, oh, it's an Italian pasta, right? Spaghetti and meatballs. Pasta actually came from China. And like when you actually go and research that and you see where things came from, you can see the origins of it. And I think to me, that's the one thing that I like to look more into is the Asian cuisine and the authentic Asian cuisine of like Japan and China.
Now I'm seeing Chef May, it looks like you have a question. Chef May?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So my questions to you, it's such an interesting just to listen to you with your wealth of knowledge from all your travel, and build out such a repertoire at such a young age being a chef. It's phenomenal. And thank you for sharing your wisdom with my students this morning. Yeah, and my questions to you is, so I understand that you and your brother are co-owners of the restaurants. So how do you guys kind of know your space and your boundary, or who's do not overstep your toes? And how do you guys work in harmony as brothers?
That's a great question. I feel very lucky. We started Valette 2015. My brother and I have both been in the culinary industry forever. I've always been cooking. He's always been in front of the house. And when we sat back, we said, I think I had a couple of beers with him. And I really said, Aaron, my brother, this is an opportunity for us to take this idea we've had, this idea of we worked together one day, and really take that and make that dream make that dream become reality. And what we did is we sat back and we said, what are our strengths and what are our weaknesses? And for Aaron, one of his strengths is he is a business major. He's a very smart business person. And he's very personable. For me, I am a little more of a bull in the industry. I grew up cooking. So for 28 years now, I've been cooking in the restaurant industry. And I was always more the aggressive. I was the guy that would, take on the challenge and just jump in, and Aaron would be more analytical and say, well, we should do X, Y, Z. So the way we kind of broke it down was by saying, what are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What are the things that I'm good at and I'll succeed at? What are the things that you're good at and you'll succeed at? And really working back and forth and working together. So the way we kind of break up responsibilities is saying, Aaron does more of the front of the house. I do more of the back of the house. I have the overarching vision for what the future looks like. And Aaron has the analytical abilities to execute the overall vision. And I think, as brothers, and I'm sure some of you guys out there have siblings, as brothers, you learn to fight each other. You also learn how not to fight each other. So we're very fortunate to be able to sit back and say, if Aaron's really passionate about something, then he kind of wins, for lack of a better word, right? And if I'm really passionate about something, that's my opportunity to win that situation. So when it came to like the patio that you guys sat on and you had dinner at, is, I had this idea of saying, we didn't think when we built it 6 months ago, we were gonna get out of COVID anytime soon. So I was the one that kind of took that leap of faith and said, we're gonna go out here and we're gonna build this patio. It was extremely expensive, and it was expensive at a time where we were uncertain of the future. It was expensive at a time where we didn't have the financial means to have a normal restaurant. But you need to have that diversification in an ownership of somebody who's willing to take the risks and somebody who's analytical, willing to help kind of ensure that you're dotting the I's, crossing T's as you go down that process. So I was the one that said, hey, we're gonna go out there and build a patio. I got a contractor, and I think within a week we had a patio built. Aaron's the one that sat back and said, okay, how do we make sure we get propane out there for heats? And how do we get, the permits out there to make sure that we have a license to be able to serve alcohol? So for us, it's a really good relationship, a good partnership, I should say, of saying one person's going to take the initiative and jump. The other person is going to make sure that we're dotting I's, crossing T's.
Fantastic. Sounds like you guys have created a nice working balance, being responsible and just sharing your gift and strength. Thank you, Chef.
Thank you so much.
Now, I see that we have a question from Nathan, but I'm clicking through. I'm not sure if he's on here. Nathan, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Oh, okay. So you're sharing a screen. There you go.
Yeah.
I didn't see your name. You have a question?
Yes. Do you have any tips or tricks for those who want to pursue the culinary lifestyle?
Absolutely, Nathan. I think the most important thing is you got to get out there and try it and see if you like it. When I was 13, I thought I wanted to be a chef. I always thought I liked cooking. I loved like the whole family coming together, sitting around a table. I love the fact that both my parents worked a lot. Both my parents are pilots, and they worked long hours and long days. But I love the idea that we were able to sit down, whatever was going on in the day. I was going to school, parents were working, whatever it was. You're able to sit down and break bread together. You had that time to talk, that time to just enjoy each other's company. So I always thought that cooking and making a career out of it would have been fun. So I was able to, again, start at 13 and really check it and see. And I've been very successful to be able to say, this is my passion. This is what I've been doing for 28 years now. That's the one thing I've been doing nonstop. And I think that's very probably important for someone like you is, finding a restaurant if you want, and I'm not sure how old you are, but find a restaurant that you're able to go to and do an apprenticeship. Go there and just spend some time with the restaurant. If that means coming in and volunteering your time to, help bus tables or just be a fly on the wall, and see if that's something you want to do. And if it is, then jump into it. If you're going to school, work, 1 day a week for 4 hours and, help polish glasses or, like you were talking about earlier, washing, dishes. And if it's something you want, if it's something that you have a passion for, you're going to find that out real quick and it's going to consume you. For me, cooking is consuming. It is, I wake up, I'm thinking about it. I go to bed, I'm thinking about it. And as a restaurateur, if you had to go to work, if you had to work 8 hours, if you didn't want to go there, but you're like, oh, I have to go, you're not going to have that same enthusiasm. Your mind's not going to be as sharp. Your mind's not going to be as active. Instead, if you do something you love, if you do something that you're passionate about, when you wake up in the morning, it's not, I have to go to work. You get excited saying, I get to go to work. And I personally was very fortunate in my life to be able to find something that I get to go to work. I am legitimately excited when it's time to go to work. I get excited. I love my family. I love my little kids, but I legitimately get excited to go to work. And I think at a young age, if you're able to identify that, maybe it's the culinary arts, maybe it's winemaking, maybe it's, making bottle tops. You find something that you're passionate about. Maybe it's engineering, and just spending some time with that person, going to that industry, going to that business and saying, hey, I think I want to make a career of this, but I want to put my toe in the water first before I jump in. That's my advice.
I was going to ask you, and I kind of feel like you already touched on this, but I love that idea about the tips and tricks, for those who want to pursue culinary. And I was going to ask to follow up on that on the side of business as well, entrepreneurism. But I feel like you kind of touched on it, but is there any last things you want to say there about tips and tricks for maybe starting a restaurant?
Absolutely. I mean, a restaurant's hard. There's no way around it. The failure rate of restaurants is 93%. So on an average restaurant that opens, 93% of them will fail within the first 3 years. And you think about the odds of that, that's pretty not good odds, right? You think about a business, you think about an accountant out there, an analytical person says, hey, you're going to get into an industry that has long hours, low return on pay, and a 93% failure rate. That's not really what people are jumping into, right? But if you look at the inverse of that and you say, well, why do 93% of the restaurants fail? Well, they haven't dotted their I's or crossed their T's. They haven't studied how to make good food. They haven't studied how to run a business. Instead, they are either people who enjoy cooking, they try to open a business, or they're people who are business owners or entrepreneurs, and they try to open a restaurant. I think the restaurant industry is different. It's like being an artist. It's like being a musician. You think about what's the failure rate of musicians, it's probably pretty high. What's the failure rate of an artist? It's probably pretty high. There are unique industries out there that are more passion driven, that are more craft driven. And I think to be a restaurateur, you have to be passionate about what you do. That's the most important. But you also have to put in the time and the dedication to your craft. For me, I remember a long time ago learning that if you were really, really good at cooking, you'd get promoted. But the only way to get promoted was to be really good at what you did. It's a catch-22. In order to be really good at what you did, you had to spend more time doing it. So when I was, 18. I was 18 years old and I moved to Los Angeles by myself. and I had no money, right? And I was renting a room out of a house. I mean, literally had no capital. And the deal was I cooked for the family in order to pay off some of my room and board because I just didn't have any money. So I would cook for them. I'd work full time, 5 days a week, and I would still cook for them 5 days a week. So my 2 days off, they would have more elegant dinners. On those 3 days I worked, I would make the food, cool it down in the morning, put in the fridge for them to heat it up when they came home. And I realized that there was a technique called tourné, right? And tourné is where you take a potato or a vegetable and you cut it 7 times to make a little football looking thing. It's a really classic, like 1920s, 1930s French scoffier kind of thing. And I wanted to practice that. So I started buying a bag of potatoes, a 20-pound bag of russet potatoes at Safeway, I think it was, and started tournéing potatoes. We had potato soup, potato porridge, all these different things that the owner of the home was paying me to cook. I was learning my technique. And at the same time, I was also offsetting the cost of the room that I was renting. So it kind of dawned on me then that if you want something, be that a restaurant, be that a job in the restaurant, be that a winery, be that anything. If you want something, you got to put in the hours and you got to have the dedication and you got to think outside the box. And I think when it comes to entrepreneurship in the restaurant world, owning restaurants, you really got to dot I's and cross T's, and you have to stay aware. You got to be sharp. You got to continue reading about business. Today, I have 7 different LLCs. I have 7 different businesses that I own today. And coming from a person who, I used to have to buy my own shoes when I was in high school. We didn't have a lot of additional capital as a child. And to be successful, it didn't come from Uncle Louie's, trust fund. It came from hard work. It came from dedication. And it really came from pushing yourself, reading, I don't watch TV, not that you people shouldn't, but I can't tell you the last time I watched TV or watched a movie, because for me, I'd rather educate my mind. I'd rather read about business. Now, having multiple businesses, when I have downtime, I want to read about the tax code. I know it sounds funny, but we want to read about tax code. We want to read about rules and regulations when it comes to different CUPs in Healdsburg to better understand what kind of rights we have in our businesses. And if you're always pushing, if you're always gaining knowledge, especially something you're passionate about, it's not work, it's fun. It's instead of watching Seinfeld or whatever shows on TV right now, I'm kind of dating myself there. You got to instead say, I want to learn about my craft, and you got to be well-rounded from business to how to sear a steak to what sous vide is and understanding how liquid nitrogen crystallizes molecules to make ice cream to, understanding what a cap rate is in a downtown business district in Healdsburg.
So we have time for a couple more questions. And I have 2 students here, Lydia and Savannah, and I'm going to go in that order. Lydia, would you mind turning your mic and camera on and asking your question, and then we'll get to you, Savannah?
Yeah, cool. Earlier, you were talking about how you built a patio for the restaurant, and I was wondering if you could expand on how the pandemic's affected your business, and specifically, what do you expect for the future?
Absolutely. The future's tricky. I can tell you the past. So I was doing a charity event in Utah called Red, White, and Snow on March 23rd. And that's when COVID really started kind of taking off last year. And I remember flying back and I remember sitting there like, man, I should read more about this. And when I touched down in Santa Rosa, I was like, wow, this might change a lot of stuff. Within a week, everything was shut down. So we as a business had an opportunity to either do what we could to pivot and try to keep our business afloat, or we had the opportunity to close the business and be safeguard our capital, right? The money we had in the bank. And for me, I sat back and I looked at it from a business perspective. And I said, we have 37 employees right now. And if we shut the business down and say, we're going to close the restaurant because we were forced to, then 37 families aren't going to have a source of income. 37 providers to their family are not going to be able to put food on the table. 37 people are not going to be able to pay their rent. 37 people are not going to have the opportunity to have a livelihood in our industry. And we made the decision to say, no, we're going to keep the restaurant open, not to serve the public, not to have in-room dining, but we're going to pivot and do a to-go model. It was hard. We were not financially stable. We lost capital. We've lost capital every month since March. But we were able to mitigate that by the fact that we kept 37 employees employed. I think 35 now, employees employed. And it was probably one of the most important decisions I've made in my career. And it kind of set the precedent for me moving forward. And the thing we realized was, even in the face of adversity, even the worst time from a business perspective, we're still able to survive by holding on to our passion, holding on to our integrity, and saying, this is what we're going to do for the right reason. Looking to the future, we think that, the world's changed. No matter how we look at it, I'm sitting here in my cellar and I have a mask right here. I mean, the world's changed, and we got to look in the future and say, we can't create a business model based off today's environment. We got to think of today's environment along with tomorrow's environment. And we don't really know what the future is, but we know that in the new restaurant, for example, we're building more outdoor venues. We're building more spacing into our model. We had a little extra storage area upstairs that we kind of changed, and we said, you know what, we're going to now go ahead and do a additional patio upstairs, or expansion of the patio, to allow a 6-foot spacing model that we never really had built in before. So I think you got to look at what happened, and you have to learn how to pivot in the environment you're in on a moment's notice. And then you need to look ahead and say, what do we think the future is going to be, and how do we be successful in that? So
on that same note,
I wish I knew the future, but I don't.
Well, actually, I was about to ask you another question about the future, so hopefully you can fake it. But on that same note, a lot of these students are thinking of going into the restaurant industry. Do you foresee that things, as the vaccine rolls out, that things are going to get better, and that there will be more job opportunities for those who want to enter the industry?
I absolutely do. I mean, I'm an optimist, right? I have a restaurant. I'm always an optimist, always have been, always will be. And for me, I'm looking at it ahead and saying, we have a light in the tunnel. For a long time, that light was flickering. For a long time, that light was on and off. Now with the vaccine rollouts, I feel that we have a light in the tunnel. It's gonna be a long road, but we have a goal we're working towards now. So I think people on this call right now, or the Zoom call, they're looking to move ahead in the future and looking to come into the industry. I think now is a darn good time. And I think it's gonna be really important that you just try working one day a week, go into a restaurant and say, hey, I want to volunteer my time for 4 hours a day, for 2 days a week, just to get your toe in that water. And I think from a business standpoint, most restaurants are not in an ideal situation when it comes to finances, but they're always willing to kind of help. We as a restaurant right now, we don't have any opportunity at Valette. We're fully staffed, but we're looking at the Matheson, for example, that we're gonna need to hire people. So you have restaurants now that are starting to open, or restaurants are starting to see a light in the tunnel. And I think from the people who are on the call right now, I think the opportunity is fantastic to get out there and see if it's something you like, see if it's something you want to make a career of.
Great. Final question is going to be from Savannah. Savannah, do you want to ask your question of Chef Dustin? Savannah, are you there? Okay. Well, maybe she left us, but okay. Well then we'll just actually wrap it up right there. I think that's a good place to leave it. I want to thank you again, Chef Dustin, for joining us,
Absolutely.
For sharing your experiences and your advice, and thank you to Chef May and all of her students who joined us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys very much. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. And again, if you guys ever need anything, please feel free, go to ValetteHealdsburg.com. You can email me directly from there. If you need anything, please let me know. I was your guys' age one time, and I was very fortunate to be able to kind of find my calling at a young age and really kind of just jump in and do this career. And I've loved it ever since. And I think, there's nothing out there there's no career out there. There's no industry out there that doesn't reward hard work. And if you want to be successful, you need to put in the hours. You got to go be a dishwasher. You got to start as a dishwasher. You got to understand what that is to be a dishwasher. And then when you own your own business, there's days I've washed dishes at my restaurant. I own it. But like, there's days where, you want to show the dishwasher he's not alone, right? You don't want to show the dishwasher that you can do the same job as him. And I think you need to have that roundness in order to be a successful business owner in whatever industry that is. So again, any of you guys ever need, please feel free, let me know. Very happy to be part of this, and thank you very much for your guys' time.
Thank you, Chef Dustin, and stay safe.
Thank you, Brandon, for allowing our students and me to be part of this event. It's really fun.
Of course.
Thank you very much.